Hello my friends, we have some of the changes on the front lines. Let's go to the hotspots. The first one is Avdiivka, and there Ukraine has the counterattack and it is quite successful. And as you can see, Russia is trying to encircle the Avdiivka city, or it's better to say town. They're moving from this direction and also from this direction. They have more forces on the south, however, but still unable to penetrate the defense lines over here. And they were moving very slow compared to the Bakhmut city. Well, most of the forces are the regular Russian army, and we have the information that Wagner forces also were sent to reinforce the Russian side in this area, but not standard prisoners. Those Wagners are very experienced, used to fight in Africa and Syria, but as you can see, it didn't help. They stuck over here in Avdiivka, and Ukraine performed a successful counterattack, even though it was kind of the small one compared to the Bakhmut advancement of the Wagner forces, but still we have it. If we go to the timeline, so it was like a couple of days ago, and it is right now. So we entered over here and now fighting against the Russian 136 separate motorized brigade that reinforced by two other battalions. As you can see, there is also the DPR regiment fighting over here, but I think they are in lack of the resources because all of the mobilized men are basically wasted on this war from the DPR side. So the main idea for Ukrainian army in that area, as I see it, is to perform the counterattack towards the eastern side, and recently we also advanced from the north, and by doing so we may encircle the Russian army on the north side of this hump. And from my information, Ukrainian forces collected enough resources to make it real. However, the Russian side says that Ukrainian counterattack bogged down. In its turn, the Ukrainian side says that we penetrated the Russian defense lines in that area. So I guess the truth is somewhere in the middle. There's the heavy fighting ongoing, but with that counterattack, Russia cannot concentrate on attacking from the north side, and the only way how they can enter the city is from the south, but still not capable to do it because we also built quite successful defense lines on the south part from Avdiivka. And if we zoom in, you'll see there are lots of the big fields. We have the fields that sometimes several kilometers in width and length. So for Russia, it is the open space where they can be under the fire, exactly as happened near to Vuhledar. Then they lost quite a lot of the forces. And I don't see the scenario of Avdiivka encirclement in a nearby perspective. Probably after a few months, we'll see, but if Ukraine starts the counterattack, Russia would concentrate on defense, mostly not on attacking Avdiivka. And in general, it's great that even before the main counterattack, we have the achievements in Donbass. Now moving to Bakhmut, it's not really far away from that place, and here our enemy has the advantage. So for today, there were just minor changes if we go here, but yesterday there was the major change also in favor of Ukraine. We pushed Russians away from this lake over here, so it was a couple of days ago and it is today. So they tried to attack on the north part unsuccessfully, were beaten and forced to retreat. For them, the big problem is this lake, the natural obstacle, and the river that goes from it all around the city, and we have the other lake in Hromove and the other river. As for the city, Russia took all of the factory together with the central part of the Bakhmut. It is very bad, but Ukraine was able to build the defense line, so here is the railway, we use it as defense line, also this road over here, and all of the constructions that are on the way. Today, the chief of Wagner, Prigozhin, confirmed that Ukraine is not going to withdraw from the city. They concentrate and build new defense lines, and even though Ukrainian army would leave the city, they will build a new one in the Chasiv Yar. The Chasiv Yar is over here, and we are building those defense lines. Most of them already were built, and if Wagners would finally take the city under their control, here we are not speaking about the encirclement of Ukrainian forces. They are unable to do it, and their attacks all were cancelled because of the Ukrainian resistance. But nevertheless, Wagners, as you can see, take the ground in the city, and yes, it could be unfortunately that they finally would take control all over the city, but the next advantage of the Wagner forces is not possible. So that is basically it for the Wagner soldiers. They cannot advance further. They still have much less resources compared to the Ukrainian army, and the main task for Ukrainian forces was to destroy the Wagner army. We did it in defense, so mostly it is now destroyed. So after the Bakhmut, Wagners will not be able to take more towns or cities, and Prigozhin confirmed that. He said that without new men into his army, and just to remind you, he was forbidden to take more prisoners to the Wagner PMC, and that's why he said that Wagner army would shrink very fast after they take the Bakhmut city. And we know today that Russia sent the airborne division to help Wagner forces in Bakhmut. And that's why they start to push again with the new forces. So the fight for Bakhmut is quite illogical from any of the perspectives. It is more logical for the Ukrainian side because we caused them losses and we are in defense. But for the Russian side, with all of those losses, the only profit I see is personally for Prigozhin. He may secure his position and he could be untouchable for many of the enemies that he got inside the Russian elite or inside the Russian army. And I think that the city will not be taken before the massive Ukrainian counterattack. That's the idea from the Ukrainian side. And the preparation for the future counterattack continues. Speaking about Melitopol, there were lots of the explosions reported recently. Russian ammunition warehouses were damaged or destroyed, so I guess it could be the main direction for the future counterattack. But it's quite tricky because we need to penetrate the Russian defense lines and they're building new ones day by day. And we get the leaks about the future Ukrainian counterattack that firstly appeared in the Russian media, so I guess we may not trust it. Well, first of all, there is no specific information published about the place and the time of the future counterattack, no any vectors, nothing. We have just the information about the Ukrainian army needs to the United States of America, and also there is the information about the casualties from two of the sides, but clearly there are signs of the Photoshop in that part, and I know what I'm talking about. So even though it was published by the Western resource, the New York Times, I wouldn't trust this information. And it's the awesome day for the Ukrainian air defense. So this is the Russian Sukhoi Su-25 attack airplane that was shot down somewhere on the south part. For full video, please visit my Telegram channel. By the way, my friends, I use my Telegram channel as alternate resource. If something goes wrong with my YouTube channel, I publish there regularly, so don't forget to subscribe for me on Telegram as well. You may find the link in the video description just below. And speaking about Bakhmut, you can see the state of the roads. They're totally muddy, so it's not the proper time for Ukrainian counterattack. You can see this vehicle totally bogged down, and this the big one as well. That's why we need some of the vehicles with caterpillars, and finally that one managed to get out our BTR from the mud as well as other vehicle. And now the weather is getting drier day by day, so in a couple of weeks or maximum 3 weeks it would be okay to start the attack maneuvers. And this is the Russian city of Voronezh. You can see that there is some big fire around there. Someone smoked again. And let me show you where the fire is, because for this hour it has not been eliminated. So this is the Ukraine, and Voronezh, I would say that it's very close to the Ukrainian border, just the next Russian oblast, and quite a big city. I would say it's divided by the river, and here you can see the airfield, but the fire was over here. So here you can see the other airfield, and this is the Russian aviation factory Vaso. It produces the spare parts for the military airplanes and also commercial airplanes. Why is it important? Because they also produce the composite materials, and the aircraft parts built out of the composite materials, for example fuel tanks for Sukhoi, also the parts of the aircraft skin, fairings and radomes. Now after smoking, I'm not sure whether they will be able to continue their production. President Zelensky today clarified about Crimea. Before, like a couple of days ago, one of his officials said about the agreements with Russia about this peninsula, and the Ukrainian president today said that the only way to agree on that peninsula is to return it back to Ukraine. So without the fighting, of course it would be preferable, but I don't think that Russia would just withdraw their forces from Crimea and say to Ukraine, yeah, it was the mistake. No, Putin will never do it, and that's why we should expect fighting for the peninsula. And the Russian army is getting ready for their best activity that they perform perform as no one in this world the military parades. We are speaking about the great patriotic victory that they celebrate on 9th of May, and here you can see lots of the vehicles that they will put on the Red Square. But that particular military parade could be tricky for the Russia this time, because one of the owners of Monobank, one of the biggest banks in Ukraine, Vladimir Yatsenko, said that they will give 20 million hryvnias to the producer of the drones that will launch the drone successfully to the Red Square on 9th of May. It shouldn't carry any kind of explosives, but just land over there, and 20 million hryvnias price is equal to $500,000. And the British Defense Intelligence tells us that the Wagner forces were reinforced by the airborne Russian brigades and now capable to take more ground in the Bakhmut area. But again, the last 24 hours there were no any changes in Bakhmut, and yesterday Ukraine got the ground. Interesting information about the Slovakian MiGs. It appeared that Russian techniques were in Slovakia a few months ago and they were preparing those airplanes for the flights, but potentially those technicians could have sabotaged some of the systems of the airplanes and now few of the airplanes cannot take off. I'm sure that Slovaks will fix it with the help of the friends, maybe, but you see what may happen if you hire Russians for the important job. And I think it was the nonsense to let them into the military base for the airplane service. The new Brazilian president says that it's better to keep Crimea as the Russian territory to finish this war. And I am, as the person who was born in Crimea and who spent lots of the time over there in the vast part of the life, I must say to Brazilian president, go and yourself and mind your own business in Brazil. We have the statement from Anthony Blinken. He says that the Ukrainian army will start the counterattack in the nearby weeks. That's awesome. And also he says that the decision to return back Crimea lies into Ukrainian prerogative. Well, thank you, Mr. Blinken. At least our close allies understand that. He says that Ukraine is the democratic country and President Vladimir Zelensky bears the responsibility for the action of the army, and also he presents the voice of Ukrainians and should follow their will. So that's the normal logic, and I'm sure that majority of Ukrainians would like to return Crimea. Obviously it would be better to return it without any fighting, but I guess it's hard to avoid. My friends, now press the like to this video, and if you want to support my job, you may join my Patreon team, the sponsorship on this channel, or you may support me on PayPal. Thank you so much for your help, and I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.